Welcome everyone to our next SLG webinar, Chartership and the PKSB. I think if you've missed the notification in the chat, we've asked people to switch their videos off or their cameras off and to mute themselves, and if you've got any questions, put this in the chat with a Q in front of it, please, so that we can see what's actually a question rather than people sort of chatting amongst themselves. My name is Barbara Band. I'm a chartered librarian. My background's mainly in schools. I'm currently on the SLG committee. I'm also a SLIP mentor. I've been a mentor. I've tried to work out today how long I've been a mentor for, and it's quite a long time. It was before the PKSB was created, so that probably tells you how long it is. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is I've no idea what stage you're at with your chartership journey. So I've no idea if you've taken one look at the website and decided help, or if you've had a go at things and then thought, no, I can't do this. This isn't working. You know, I need to get some more advice, some more information about this. So if the first couple of slides you already know how to do that, then go off and make a cup of tea, and then I'll get on to the other stuff. So first of all, I need to talk about accessing the Chartership group on the website, because I do know that the SLIP website is not the easiest of one to navigate. If you go onto the SLIP homepage, at the top, you will see my profile. If you click on that, it will come up with a page, and on the left-hand side will either be your photo if you've added one, or I'm guessing it's sort of a shadowy head if you've not added a photo. And one of those things listed will be my groups. Now, there's a number next to that, and my groups are basically all the select groups that you've joined, because you can join any group you like now. You can, from whatever member network you're in, whatever you're interested in, the Youth Libraries group, SLG, YLG. So there'll be a number next to this, and if you click on the number, you will then, under the list of groups that comes up, you should have professional registration candidates, because that's what you are. Okay, now this is inside this group. If you click on the group, there's lots of information that you are going to need for your chartership. The select guide for chartership, the handbook, is in there. I would suggest you have a look through the handbook if you haven't. It has the criteria that you need to meet with your portfolio submission. It's got a submission checklist of all the documents you need, and it also explains the whole process. Now, what I will say is, if you look at it and you think this is all a bit unclear, some of this, don't worry, because as you go along, the more you start to do your chartership and put your portfolio together, the more you will then understand what the handbook's talking about. Okay, so what I will say as well is, as you're going through this journey, go back and refer to it, because that handbook is your real guide to submission and getting your professional registration. Now, at the bottom of that page, the professional registration candidates site, is an area with lots of orange tabs, lots of links at the bottom of that page. And this is another area to explore and revisit. This area can be a bit overwhelming, because you click on one of those orange tabs and it leads you to more pages and lots of links and lots of other videos and sheets of advice, and you can get a bit lost. My advice here would be to just focus on what you want now. Don't go down the rabbit hole and look at all the other stuff. So, for example, if you want to get some advice about collecting evidence, then look for that. If you want some advice about reflective writing, then look for that. Okay. Now, on the page under the main page where you've got a heading Getting Started Tips, that's your link there to the PKSB. And if you've not been through it yet, you will need to have a new login for your PKSB, and it's a totally different login from your SLIP membership. But I'm hoping that most of you have actually looked at the PKSB and gone through to that page, so you've gone through that extra step. Well, I will point out is at the top of the home page where you've got my profile, there's also quick links, and I've done a screenshot of that you can see on there. If you just want to go straight to the PKSB, if you're not interested in the handbook or anything else, straight to the PKSB, you've got a link there for it. You've also got a link to the e-learning and webinars, which is one of those orange tabs. Lots and lots of different things to explore there. So make sure, as I say, you have a look at those at some point. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is assessment criteria, because you need to make sure you are addressing these in your portfolio evidence. The first thing is your personal development. This is where you undertake CPD to increase your skills and experience and knowledge as a professional librarian, apply it in practice, and then reflect on the outcome of this. Okay. Now, this reflection can be on what you gained in experience, or it can be a reflection on applying it in practice. The second assessment criteria that you have to meet is to do with the organizational context of your service. You evaluate your service, and then you implement and make recommendations based on your CPD, and then you reflect on the outcome of this. Now, I know that there can be barriers to providing a service. You know, we have barriers of time, we have barriers of money. So you can be critical. Okay, this is why you should not have a manager as a mentor. You can be critical of your service. Okay, the assessors are not expecting perfection, but you do need to show how you've managed to bring about improvements. The third criteria is that you need to show that you've enhanced your knowledge of the wider profession. I'm not going to focus on this because this is something I tell my mentees, don't worry about until you've sorted out the first two, the first two assessment criteria. Okay. But there are lots of other areas you can explore. I've had mentees look at archives. They've had chats with health librarians. They've gone into universities, the public library. There's a huge range of different types of librarians out there that you can explore. And my advice usually is to choose something you're interested in. Actually. Right, and PKSB, this wonderful, I was going to say diagram, but it isn't, is it? It's a circular thing, right? Let's have a look. I'm got two screens I'm juggling here, right? What I will say about the assessment criteria is that it's written like you've got assessment criteria 1 and assessment criteria 2. Now, I think for school librarians, these are linked, that improving yourself as a professional librarian, taking on CPD, it's part of a process, because we tend not to do CPD unless it's going to impact our service, unless it's something we want to learn about that we put into practice in our school libraries. So we do personal CPD linked to what we want to do, what we are doing, what we're planning to do at school, and then we put it into practice. We apply those new skills, those new knowledge, that new experience we've learned to improve our service. Sometimes there are exceptions. For example, you might volunteer for a SIG, a special interest group, and you might decide you quite like to take on the social media role, but you've not had any experience of doing this. So you need to do some CPD on social media, how to interact with it, what's the best social media to use, things like that. Nothing to do with your job, because you don't have a library social media account and the school won't let you have one. So it's sort of personal CPD that is not linked to your service, but you can still show evidence of that in your portfolio because it's personal development. Right, PKSB. Now you need to remember this is a tool. It's quite dynamic. It covers all professional sectors. Whatever sector of the profession you happen to be working in, you use the PKSB. So by its nature, it's very broad. And it's also quite a lot of it is not what I think of as non-specific. It doesn't say this is what a school librarian does. This is what a health librarian does. It gives a very general term for each of these areas. Now, if you look at it, there are 9 elements that cover professional expertise, those 9 sort of slightly faded blue sections, and there are 4 at the bottom that cover generic skills. In the centre is ethics and values, and this should underpin everything you do as a professional librarian. And what people may not realise is you can actually select ethics and values as one of your PKSB areas, okay? And then you've got the outer circles. And if you basically, you've got professional development, organisation and environmental context, and the wider sector context. I'm not going to go into those in a lot of detail. If you want to know more about those, if you go into your PKSB and you can click on them and get more information. What I want to focus on tonight are the professional expertise sections and the generic skills. I have to say, I would say when this was announced, published, we were actually all sent documents. I was sent a document, really nice, opened out A4 size document. I took one look at it and I thought, what on earth is this? And I stuck it in a file. And then I realised, I thought, this is no good. I'm going to have to talk to my mentees about this, and I'm going to have to try and explain to them what it's all about. So I sat down and sort of went online and sort of tried to get to grips with it. It took me a long time before I really got to grips with the PKSB. And so don't worry if you look at this and you think, I have no idea what I'm meant to do with this tool. So the PKSB is broken down, as I said, into sections, 13 in total. Each of those sections on that wheel is broken down further. So I've pulled out, I've done a screenshot, section 1, I've done a small one because it's only 1 to 6, collection management and development. And it's quite a good one for school librarians because we are involved in a lot of these aspects. And you can see that, 1.1 collection management, 1.6 collection promotion. Ignore the orange bits because I've done a screenshot from my PKSB to demonstrate this. So these are areas, it says developing, these are areas that I've selected to show development. I am registered for fellowship, and I've been registered for fellowship for a while. So, and I'm aware that I really need to get on and do it, but I'm not very good at following my own advice, and it's still sitting there, and it's in my to-do list. So I need to get on with it. Anyway, so you only have to select 10 to 12 of these areas, not the segments, not the sections, not those things on that wheel. 10 to 12 of these. So if there's 2 I've selected on this, 1.3, 1.5. Okay. You will find as you look at them, not all are relevant to school librarianship, but the problem is that a lot of them are. Okay, on here, 1.4 legal deposit is not normally relevant to school librarianship. The other 5 can be, depending on what you're doing. And I think because a lot of them are relevant to school librarianship, this is where we struggle with choosing the sections for our PKSB for the portfolio, because we can only choose 10 to 12. Okay. The thing to remember is, although they might all be relevant to your work, you need to think about the work you are doing now, the projects you are actively involved in or planning to be involved in the next year or so, and what sections, what areas are relevant to those. Okay, because that is the important aspect. It's not what you do as a general rule, and we all do collection management. We all select materials and resources, probably, once a month, once every half term, maybe once a year. But it's what you're going to be doing now that you can gather evidence for. Okay. Now, as I said, I think the PKSB areas, selecting them is the thing that most of my mentees struggle with. And it is partly because it is also relevant. It is very easy. And I don't know if any of you have done this, you may have done it. You go through the PKSB and you look at all those sections and you think, yeah, I do that, I do that, I do that, I do that. And by the time you've done all that, you ticked 80. And you think, right, okay, I can't submit 80. I've only got to choose 10 to 12. I'm going to give you some advice in a minute on how you can do that. But first of all, I want to look at the 3 tabs at the top, the show more information, show ratings key, and download a report. Right, so let's move on. There we go. So show more information. I have expanded. If you click show more information, it expands each of those points, 1.1, 1.2. And I've just done it for 2, so you can actually read what it says rather than all these, tiny little text on a slide. Okay, so it's when you're going through the PKSB, please do open up show more information, because that will help you decide which areas to select. You need to read this before you select it. Okay, so you see here we've got 1.2 collection, and if you're creating a collection development policy, or if you're working out strategy for auditing your collection, then you're doing it's 1.2, because that's your strategy you're working on. Okay, if you've already written your policy, your strategy, and you are now going to apply it when you're purchasing resources or weeding stock, that's your collection management. Okay, so as I say, do not ignore that tab at the top. This will give you lots of extra information. The next tab along, the one in the middle, is show ratings key. Right, so once you've decided on your PKSB areas, you need to carry out a self-assessment, and you rate yourself from 0 to 4. Now, the levels here are fairly self-explanatory. Okay, I mean, 1 is that you're basic, sort of not much knowledge. 3, you're looking at can you support others to develop their knowledge and skills in that area, and 4 is expert. Now, what I will say is you're going for chartership. You're going, and if you look at number 4, advanced, you're recognizing an expert in this area. Now, I have to say, when I've gone through, I've not put 4 in any of my areas, because I don't consider myself an expert. It's probably partly imposter syndrome, but also I know the more I learn about things, the more I realize there is to know about things. It's really hard, isn't it? So you need to think about what level you're at, but there are no expectations, right? The assessors are not going to look and think, this chartership candidate has only got level 2s. That's not very good. Okay, you are not going to be assessed on your PKSB. You have to submit it as part of your portfolio, but that is it. It just needs to be in there. If you want to be assessed on it, you can add further information. And there's a comments box you can see next to the ratings. You can add further information and ask for them to use it in your assessment. But it's not, they won't do that automatically unless you ask. So do not worry about your ratings. Do not feel that you have to put yourself down as basic or good and show that you're an expert at the end of your chartership journey, because it's very likely you won't be. I mean, you might be in one particular area. It might be something you're really interested in, and you've really researched it and learned about it and given webinars or talks on it. But most people at chartership level will be looking maybe at level 3 comprehensive. Okay, now when you look at the ratings, okay, for each PKSB area, you need to put in, to start with, an initial rating. That's where you are now, right, at the start of your journey. What is your current level of expertise? And then you also put in a target rating. And that's where you want to be at the end of your chartership journey, what you're aiming for, not at the end of your career, and it's not what I want to be, I don't know, area manager or whatever. That is your where you plan to be at the end of your chartership journey. And most people, they say 2 to 3 years. So you're looking at terms of a whole career, fairly short term, aren't you? When you're ready to submit your portfolio, you revisit the PKSB and you enter your current rating. And that's the level you reached at the end of that journey. When you're ready, you've done your chartership journey, you're ready to submit your portfolio, you go back and you think, right, my initial rating was good. I put comprehensive. Am I really, I don't think I'm quite there yet. I've still got quite a lot to learn. I thought there was only a little bit, and I've discovered there's a lot more involved in this topic. So I'm still at good. Okay. That is absolutely fine. Okay, you are no, please don't worry about this because I know a lot of people do. Okay, so you could be there could be all sorts of reasons as well why you've not managed to move on to level three, which is what you wanted to do. It could be that there was no CPD available for you at that level, that to push you further on. Okay. If you want to enter comments, if you want the assessors to take into account your PKSB ratings, your PKSB, you basically need to put in how you develop your skill, how you applied it, and if your target is higher than your current rating, how you want to develop and why. How you want that, why you want to carry on with learning in this area and how you're going to do that. Okay. When you're working with the PKSB, make sure you click on save at the bottom. There's a save button at the bottom. If you've not scrolled down to the end of the screen, you might not see it. So save it, and then you finish will take you back to the home page. What I will also say is you can change your PKSB because it's your PKSB. Nobody sees it until you submit it. You can change it at any time. So if you've done lots and lots of areas and you've done lots of ratings and things, and you're beginning to think, hang on a minute, I don't think I've rated myself properly, go back in and change it. You can remove things, you can add things. It's your PKSB, it's a tool. Okay. The other thing as well is you can complete this retrospectively. And I know I've had people ask me about filling it in for projects they've finished. And yes, you can complete that retrospectively. You can use evidence from about 12 to 18 months ago. It's quite hard. I always find it quite hard to work out what your initial rating would have been. But if you're not going to have it assessed, then it's a bit theoretical, really, isn't it? Right, the PKSB reports is the other thing. And right, the full report is everything. It will print out, everything, your PKSB areas, the ones you've not clicked, you basically don't really need that. Okay. The development report is areas where your initial or your current level of knowledge and skills are below your target. So these are areas that you're still developing. So if you think about it, you put target of 3 and your current rating is 2. So that's areas that you've highlighted that you want to expand your CPD in, your skills in, and you still need some more CPD in that area. Okay. Your strengths, what it says, they're areas where your current level is above 2. So where your strengths, those areas is either comprehensive or advanced. And rated is where your initial and current and target levels are 1 and above. So the rated areas are where you've filled in all of them. Okay, so if you've gone through and you filled in lots of PKSB areas, but then you go back and revisit and only rate 12 of those areas, the rated report will only show those areas where you've got those 3 ratings. And the rated report is the one that you submit with your portfolio. Right? So as I say, dynamic tool, it will help you plan your CPD. You can link it to your career aspirations, even use it in your appraisal. So, and because and I know some organizations do use it in appraisals, but I'm not sure how many school librarians and line managers would say, oh yes, bring your PKSB report along. So right, how do we select the PKSB areas? Because on the website, it says, select the PKSB. That's what it says. Select your PKSB areas. And you think, right, okay. And as I said, if you look at section 1, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Section 1, the majority could be relevant to school librarians, couldn't they? Collection management, we do that. Collection strategy, we could be, even if we've got a policy written, there could be changes in the collection due to changes in the curriculum or your school demographics, which may mean your strategy needs to be revisited. We select materials and resources, collection evaluation. So that's basically that we need to evaluate the needs of the students constantly to assure that we're meeting them, and they change, and collection promotion. So really the only one out of all those is area 1.1.4. So already there are 5 areas of the PKSB that could be relevant. So you can see how you can end up with way too many. But remember, when you're ticking these areas, you have to meet the criteria. Keep those criteria in mind all the time. You have to show evidence of personal CPD and the impact of putting that into practice to improve your service. So it is really no good choosing something that you do every autumn term and don't undertake any CPD for, or you won't have it because you won't have any evidence for it. You won't meet the criteria. If it's something you do every day, term after term, year after year, that is not what the assessors are looking for. They're looking for projects for personal development and improvements to service where you can show you've made an impact. Okay. Now, I think instead of just looking at the PKSB and ticking areas, I think a better approach is to start with the projects you're working on. What are you doing in the next term or in the next year in the library? What actions, what projects, activities are you doing that link with the actions on your school development plan or your library development plan, or maybe even that have been raised in your appraisal? Okay, so think about seriously activities that you're going to be involved in, and then link those activities to the PKSB. Make sure that you, as well as thinking about the activities, where you will need CPD, what activities will you need to improve your knowledge on, increase your knowledge, improve your skills, because you obviously need to show development as a professional librarian. And then how are you going to use that CPD to improve your service? So as I say, if every autumn term you do a new books display, and that's what you do, then it's not really improving your service. You're just carrying on with the service that you've always provided. Okay. And the final bit, really, which is the most important, is think about the evidence you are going to collect, because you need to make sure that whatever projects you choose to focus on, you will be able to collect evidence for. If you choose something and it's going to be really hard to collect evidence to show impact, you are going to struggle with evaluating and reflecting on that in your portfolio. So I'm going to go through some examples. These are just made up. These are made up examples, okay, that I've done for this, right? So let's say, let's start with a small project. So you're going to do a revision service for A-level students. So perhaps you were having a chat to the head of sixth form, or you saw that the heads of departments were going to do subject revision lessons for the sixth forms. In the run up to exams. You think, oh, I can help with that. I can get involved in that. So your first step will be talk to your head of sixth form, head of department, your sixth form staff, ascertain the exam boards, maybe the topics to focus on, and find out what they already do, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Okay. And then you purchase, well, you might need to then research revision guides, check what you've already got and purchase some new ones. You might also decide you want to get some how-to revision resources, not books linked specifically to the exam board subjects, but exam techniques and things like that. And your CPD here could be basically increasing your knowledge of what's available to provide a more relevant and appropriate resources for your school community. You might decide you're going to set up a revision area in the library, depending on your space, obviously. You want to put the guides all nearby so they're easy to find. Make sure there's some charging points available for students to plug in their laptops and things. Provide some stationery for them, some little revision cards. If some people like to write out revision cards, don't they? If you're able to, coffee, biscuits, whatever works really, because I always think food is a good carrot to get people into the library. And you might also decide you want to provide some generic revision lessons, giving tips and advice on how to revise different techniques. And you're also going to cover exam stress and how to deal with it, and how to improve your well-being during exam times. So you do a timetable for revision lessons, okay? And this also facilitates students to support each other, because they're joining together in the lessons, etc. So your CPD here could be, I'm not saying it is, but it could be searching out best practice for revision techniques to pass this information, this knowledge on to help your students. You then obviously need to promote what you're doing to the students and staff, because you can have the best resources in the world and all sorts of amazing activities. If they don't know about it, they won't come to the library. So you need to tell them what you've got and what you're doing. And then you evaluate your service. And you could do this by looking at the usage of your space and resources. So gathering quantitative evidence, but I would also suggest qualitative evidence, such as comments from them. You can ask them to just fill in a little questionnaire, not questionnaire, but what did you think of the revision session, or what was the most useful bit? And maybe you want to put the some of these statistics all together in an infographic to send to senior management, and you think, right, I've never done an infographic before, so my CPD here is learning how to use how to create an infographic. And you might want to say, right, this is how many students, but also I want to show the use by subjects, which would be quite useful. And if you decide to do this exercise, this service annually, you can then start building up annual figures, so you can see a trend, you see. And if it drops off, you think, right, okay, why people stop coming to my revision sessions? Okay, now let's look at that and link it to the PKSB. Right, so I've gone through these actions and I've looked through the PKSB and I've thought, right, selection of materials and resources, which is obvious. Understanding information seeking behavior, which is why people need information, how they find and use it. This is what you're doing when you're researching what your students need to revise, what they need to revise, how they need to revise, things like that. You've got service innovation, because the developing your services includes your physical space and resources, as well as the actual services you provide. And it also includes equality of access and presentation skills. If you're going to be delivering sessions to your sixth formers, you might want to do, a bit of research on how to deliver good presentations if you haven't done any for a while. You've got collection promotion, obviously, that's fairly obvious. Knowledge sharing and collaboration, because you're doing that, you're sharing your skills and expertise now with students and encouraging them to share from each other. Community learning and development entails improved well-being, customer service skills, and engaging with stakeholders, and communication skills. And then finally, in the last section, evaluating, is advocacy, demonstrating your value and impact, and communication skills again. Now, the last section only works if you do actually use your evidence to advocate and demonstrate your value and impact. If you just don't do anything with it, then you're not doing that at all. Okay, but assume you are, and you can see on this we've already got 12 PKSB areas, and that's one small project. So you can see how using several projects for evidence within your portfolio will lead to way too many PKSB areas. Okay, now let's do another. This is an outreach project. So basically, you've been approached by the pastoral team and your Senko. They've got a group of vulnerable students, lots of different issues, and they want you to put together an outreach project for them. So and we're talking about students that ascend, maybe pupil premium. Some might have issues at home, such as bereavement or anxiety. And generally, with these students, sadly, their attendance is low. So the aim of the project, they want you to increase their well-being, and hopefully this will impact on their attendance. So your CPD is researching to what works. What is the impact of reading and the school library on well-being? You're probably looking at various studies and things like that. And also, if there are any students with areas of concern, you will want to have a look and see what suitable materials are available that you can maybe purchase to support them. You then audit your stock and purchase the new stuff if you need it, which you probably will. You have they have timetable sessions, so you don't have to worry about bringing them to the library to promote it, because they've been selected to take part in this project. And these sessions, do food and drink, make them informal, lots of activities, book chat. You can have various things like a loyalty card, so that every time they come they get it stamped. Your CPD here could be discussions with other librarians in other schools. What do they do? You might want to read a few articles about, how can you entice students who are not really engaged with reading, things like that. Communication throughout the project with parents and staff. You might be asked to give a presentation to parents to get them on board, okay? And again, evaluation. So attendance at the sessions. All the students come to all the sessions? Do the students start using the library at other times? Have they started borrowing books from the library? Okay. And feedback from students and staff and parents. Okay. Personal stories are really, really strong. They're very strong evidence for advocacy. And the statistics are one thing, but if you can tell a personal story, somebody's own experience, that really is far more powerful. Okay, so and also if you want to think about their increased well-being or their increased attendance, then you obviously have to collaborate with other staff to see what their viewpoint is. Have they noticed these students feel generally better? Are they coming to school more? Has their attendance increased? Okay, so again, I've linked this to PKSB areas, and you can see lots of different areas, 13 in this one. Now, the areas you link to is going to depend on what you're doing, right? So I'm not saying that if you're doing an outreach project like this, you are going to be having all those PKSB areas that are relevant to it. It really does depend on exactly what you need to do for CPD to advance your knowledge and your experience and skills, and what you are actually doing with the activities. So you're putting it into practice. But this is just an example just to show you. One more, which is encouraging Key Stage 3 boys to read wider. Right, a bigger project. This was picked up on the school development plan. And basically so your first step is obtaining data on reading, their interest and general interest. When you're doing anything like this, it's marketing, right? If finding out what your school community needs is a marketing exercise, because then what you do is you then create resources and services that meet those needs and promote them to them. Okay, but finding out information on your school community or on your target sections of your school community is marketing. Okay, so you can see here lots of other PKSB areas about what could be involved. Okay, I'm not sure how many, I haven't counted these. So but as I say, these are theoretical projects. I just thought about 3 projects, what might be involved in delivering them, and what CPD or PKSB areas might be connected with them. Okay, so for example, a good example of that is on here. I put 10.9 on events programming, because you might decide as part of this, you've got the funds, you've been given some funds to do it, you're going to have a big author visit. And you've never really had an author visit, so you're going to do some CPD into how to make it a successful author visit, what you have to do in advance, what works on the day, things like that, and also talk to other librarians about authors they've had in, what's worked well with Key Stage 3 boys. So it does depend on, as I say, on what you do. If you're not doing an event, then you won't have 10.9, right? So apologies for what this looks like, because I know it's horrible. It's not a very nice slide, but I really wanted to get everything on here. And what I've done is I've listed the projects down one side and the PKSB areas along the top, right? And then I've ticked where those PKSB areas have occurred on those projects. And you can see straight away that in some areas you've got more crosses, well, no crosses on there, than others. Your events planning has only got 1, but things like your selection of materials and resources, your customer service skills, advocacy, presentation skills, they've got 3 crosses. So this is a way of pulling all your projects and your PKSB areas together to see which might be the most useful ones to select, because obviously you can't have all of those. You're only meant to have 10 to 12. Okay. But what I will say is this has to be read alongside the areas of focus for your CPD, which is going to vary, and also thinking about the quality of the evidence you are going to be able to provide. I've already said this, and I'm going to probably say it more than once again, because that is really, really important part of your portfolio. You have to show evidence of impact, okay? But this is a starting point for you, all right? So as I said, advocacy, if you just send off, which is 11.2, I think, if you just send off a brief report and don't get any response from anybody you send it to from senior management, there's not much evidence of advocacy happening there, because you need to demonstrate changed opinions and show you've influenced people's behaviour first to show that advocacy has worked. If you get a positive response, if you send off your report, you do a nice infographic, you get a positive response from the decision makers, and you get support or funding for the project to be repeated or continued the next year, that is evidence, because that's evidence that your advocacy, your CPD, you're doing this improved service, you're showing the impact, and you're advocating for your school or your library. It's showing that has had an impact, an advocacy impact, because you've got the support for it. So as I say, think about impact, think about evidence. Right, how am I doing for time? 1:45. I'm aware that there was a question thing. So I just wanted to say quickly, what is CPD? Because I do get asked this question. And it's not attending formal courses, it's not attending conferences or anything like that. It can be, as but it can also be informal. And I would suggest that most CPD that happens is informal. Okay, reading counts, articles, reports, studies, blogs, and you can read print things, you can read online. I think most things probably are online. I will mention the SLG blog here. We have a very active blog, but there's lots. I haven't done a list of suggested blogs because there's a lot of school librarians out there writing blogs. Don't limit yourself to UK school librarians. There's some really good stuff being written about in the US and in Australia and New Zealand and Canada. So do, look wider. Watching videos and webinars, that counts. TED Talks, some of those are quite interesting. I think there's a really good one on imposter syndrome, actually. And MOOCs, have a look at MOOCs. Some of those can actually link to the sort of skills you might want to develop. And they're not very long to do. Some of them aren't very long at all, sort of 6 hours or something. So podcasts, that's another area to explore for CPD. And forum discussions. Some of you may belong to School Librarian Network or other school librarian forums on Facebook. So the discussions within those, all CPD, anything that increases your knowledge, increases your skills, if you like. So and social media chats, they also very useful for CPD. And finally, what I will say is the SLG newsletter. It's published every half term, and there are links to research and reports and links to CPD opportunities, many of which are free. Okay, so do have a look in there and see if there's anything that's useful to you. Now, before I actually finish, I'm going to talk about evaluation and impact, because I've mentioned that lots and lots and lots throughout this whole webinar. And you can have amazing projects, amazing CPD showing you developing as a professional librarian, developing your skills and experience, putting it into practice in your library by doing all these wonderful activities and projects. If you don't evaluate the impact of these, then that's not meeting the criteria, and your portfolio will get rejected. So really important aspect. And it really is another webinar, so I'm only going to touch on it here, okay? So, and the other thing with evaluation and impact is if you want to advocate for your school library, and we all need to be advocates, to be honest, because we have to fly the flag, bang the drum, whatever, every opportunity to demonstrate our value and benefits, then to show that advocacy, we need that evaluation impact, because it doesn't mean anything without that. We need to show the difference we make. Okay, so very briefly, evaluation is a process, right? So, and you basically need to decide what do you want to evaluate and why, okay? What data you'll collect and how you are collecting it. And it's no good deciding that at the end of your project or activity because the time will have gone. You might, you think, oh, right, okay, I was going to do a survey before I did these book talks and a survey after to see if anybody found them useful. And I've forgotten to do the survey before, so I can't do the comparison, get the data for them. Okay, so you need to decide, at the beginning. And the last stage of the whole process is analysing the data and reporting on the results. Right? Now, there are three types of data or metrics that you will be looking at. Inputs, which are basically what went into your project or activity, so things like resources and time and cost. Your outputs, and these are tangible, they're what was produced or done for the activity itself, if you like. And the outcomes is the important aspect. That's the changes or the impact. So, for example, if you're going to create a new after-school club for wellbeing crafting activities, your inputs will be your time and cost of creating flyers and posters to promote it, and the cost of craft materials, and possibly the time of you supervising it. The output will be the club itself, students coming. The outcomes are going to be the numbers of students attending and any impact on their well-being. So you see the difference between those three types of data you collect. Now, you will be collecting quantitative data, which are things like your LMS stats, engagement by student numbers, you might want to look at, numbers of resources per student in your library, lessons booked by department. If you have departments booking lessons in your library, it's quite useful to see who books the most and to produce a pie chart with this. It does tend to prod other departments into booking lessons, I've noted. And then qualitative data, which is personal stories, those quotes from students and staff that are really powerful. Your pre and post surveys of an event that show changes in an attitudes. It's not the numbers of the surveys, it's the changes in attitudes that's important here. And a lot of your qualitative data will be anecdotal. And finally, you do need to analyze your data. There's lots of methods. I'm not going to cover that now because it's all statistical analysis, but there are lots of methods you can use to analyze your data. And what I will suggest to explore are evaluation frameworks, because if you use a framework, it will add structure to your process. Now, I've mentioned one here, Kirkpatrick's model of evaluation, because that is a good one to look at. Some of them are really quite complicated and they're quite time consuming. But this framework is relevant in education. It measures reactions to and satisfaction with activities and events. It's also easy to understand and it demonstrates impact. So it is a good one to possibly use for evaluating what you're doing. But there are others to choose from. So don't think you have to use this one, okay? And finally, that's it. So let's have a look of these questions and answer. Right. I don't know, but over to Gareth here. Is he still around, I hope?
Hi, Barbara. No, we haven't got any questions.
Oh, that's good. Okay. Right. If anybody does have any questions, it's easy enough to contact SLG. Thinking about it, I hope everybody has that's been helpful for people. I've went through it fairly quickly, but you will get the slides. The slides will be on our website anyway. So you can work through the slides in your own time. And yeah, that's sort of it really.